ask you to be seated today for our gospel reading, including the acolytes. It's a little bit different. The young people are going to help me with it in a minute. But first, I want to show you a picture and ask you, who do you think these are? 3 wise men, that's right. Do you think these men look scarier or wiser to you? Yeah. I wonder though if it's that we're a bit scared by people who look a bit different to us. Now those ones do look very different. But the gospel today, the reading of the wise people, they really were quite different. They were people from far away, and this was a time when there was a less diversity of people than there is today. So it would have been quite different. Now, I wonder if I could ask the wise men to go to the back and King Herod to come to the front to help me with our reading today. In our version today, we're reading from the Storyteller Bible as we talk about the wise men's visit. Got to use your imaginations here. The sky was black, the night was clear, the stars were bright as diamonds. Perfect, said the star watcher. Just as it should be, but just then God nudged the brightest star and sent it floating like a kite across the night sky. Quick, called the star watcher to his friends, come and see, there's a new star, and that means a new king, said the second star watcher. Somewhere a new king is about to be born. I'll tell you what, said the third star watcher, let's follow the star and see. So the 3 star watchers climbed onto their camels, we haven't got camels today, and set off after the star. When the star zigged, they zigged, and when it zagged, they zagged. They went across deserts and mountains and rivers. It was a long way they went. And then eventually, they reached the land of God's people, the Jews. Do you want to come to the front now, wise star watchers? We've come a long way, explained the first star watcher to Herod. Explain to Herod. We've followed a remarkable star. So can you tell us where the baby is? Asked the third star watcher. The baby born King of the Jews. Oh, what do you think Herod felt about that? King of the Jews? King of the Jews? Herod repeated, trying hard not to look upset, but I think he probably was. Let me speak with my advisors. A meeting that was not very happy. King of the Jews. Should we pretend the choir are your advisors? Do you want to go and consult with the choir? King of the Jews, the king shouted. King of the Jews, I am the King of the Jews. Yes, your majesty, his advisors mumbled, but God has always promised that one day he would send us a special king. Perhaps he is the one the star watchers are looking for. Herod muttered. Where does God say this special king will be born? In Bethlehem, your majesty, the city of David. Send for the star watchers, King Herod ordered. I've decided what I shall do. Gentlemen, said the king, the child you seek is somewhere in Bethlehem. Go to him, find him, then come and tell me where he is so that I can visit him too. The king said this with a smile, but his heart was black as a night without stars, and he had already determined to kill the child, so no one would take his place as the king. The star watchers didn't know that when they left, but they soon found out, for the same God who'd nudged the star visited them in a dream and told them the king's dark plan. So the star watchers went to see young Jesus. Is Amber up to being young Jesus again? Do you want to go up? Could you stay where she is? Star watchers, do you want to go and find baby Amber? Who's pretending to be baby Jesus again? So they went to see young Jesus and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh. And then they went straight home with stars in their eyes and God in their hearts. They didn't go back and see King Herod. But Herod, thank you for helping us with our reading. And star watchers, thank you for helping us. Do you want to please sit down? I think we're so used to hearing the story of the wise men that we don't always notice what's going on. If you were going to visit a baby, what sort of presents would you choose? Clothes? Nappies? Toys? Yeah. Anyone ever thought maybe food for mum, food for dad? There's a joke that's found on tea towels and online at this time of year. It jokes that 3 wise women would have asked for directions, would have helped deliver the baby, would have cleaned the stable, made a casserole, and brought practical gifts. Don't know, I'm not sure what to say about that. But let's take a bit closer look at the gifts that the Magi did bring. They do seem a bit unusual at first. Gold. I don't think I've ever seen anyone give gold to a baby. Gold is precious, expensive, and it lasts. We use it today for the things that are really important to us, like wedding rings. The gold was given as a symbol of our offering of the most important things that we have. The gold is some sign of something important about Jesus, just like a wedding ring is a sign of love. And then frankincense. I'm wondering if one of the wise people might be able to help me. I've got some frankincense here. You don't often see frankincense. Do you want to take that round so people can see it? This is frankincense, just so you can see. They're not going to take any. It's like a resin, and it's used to make. Still use it now to make incense. I'm not sure my charcoal lit, but I'm going to try putting a little bit on it anyway, just in case. Frankincense makes the most wonderful smelling smoke, and it's as if we can see our prayers and songs rising up to God to breathe in and enjoy. All our heart's longings and joys and sorrows, our hopes and dreams, are breathed in by God in our prayer and worship. So an unusual gift for a baby, but it's used still today in worship in places to remind us of our prayers going up to God, that God is here ever with us and around us. And then myrrh. Does someone else want to come and get, I found some myrrh oil. Does someone else want to come and get the myrrh oil to share with people? Take it around so people can have a smell. That's what myrrh smells like. Myrrh, I don't think it's a very nice smell. I don't know if other people like it. I don't like the smell of myrrh. It's quite a harsh smell. It reminds me a little bit of the antiseptic that stings as we put it on when we've hurt ourselves. But it's used for healing and perhaps to help a wound to heal. And I think myrrh reminds us as well of hard times, illness and grief, but also of God's ability to bring healing and life out of those times. We don't have very much information to go on in the Bible about the Magi. They're only described in Matthew's Gospel. But from the little bit that we've read, I think there's something quite brave and courageous about these people. And I wonder if you've ever imagined yourselves as one of the Magi. I wonder, even if I sense that it might be a good thing to take a really unusual gift for someone, would I be brave enough to do that? Or would I opt for a bottle of wine or chocolate, something safe? Would I have the boldness to notice this strange idea and to follow through on something so different? And I know I do like different, but even I would struggle to take frankincense or myrrh to a baby as a gift. And then notice that these Magi, they went to visit King Herod too. He was king of the area, a very important person. And Herod asked them to go back and see him once they'd found the baby. Now, okay, we can read the story now, and we know Jesus is the good guy and Herod is the bad guy, so it's easy to see why the Magi would have disobeyed Herod. But really, if you were there, if you were one of the Magi, what would you have done? You've visited a seemingly ordinary couple in a stable or a barn with their baby boy. Would you risk it and ignore the orders of the king, the most powerful person in the area, for Mary and Joseph, for Jesus? If I'm honest with myself, I don't know what I would have done. It requires a lot of courage to go against authority like that. For me, both the presents that they brought and their decision not to go back to Herod, I think they're about discernment, that they could discern God within what was going on. Now, discernment is a long word, and I want to ask you what you think discernment means. Anyone got any ideas? Discernment is the ability to judge well. If you can make out, pick out, or distinguish something, you can discern it. It's a word for recognising and perceiving things. Discerning has to do with being able to see or hear something. And we often use discernment in a particular way in churches, and we use it to mean discerning God in things. I think it's a really important part of our Christian faith. But even though we use a big word for it, discernment is in all the ordinary things of life. It's taking time each day to notice God. It might be in a conversation with someone. Maybe you get a prickly sense on your arm and you know you need to pay attention closely to what they're saying or not saying. It may be that you get that nudge to ring someone that you've not spoken to in a while. It may be sometimes that conscience niggling, prompting you to look at a difficult decision. But how can we make sure we're listening to God in this and that we're not just making it all up or doing what we want to do anyway? That's a big question which we're not going to answer entirely today. That's more than a short sermon. But it is one that we're going to look at, I suspect, within the Pilgrim course for anyone that wants to come along. We're also going to do a few things in our service today to think about this discernment and how we can invite that awareness of God into our daily lives. As I mentioned earlier, on the back of the bookmarks I've given you, oh no, I haven't mentioned the back of the bookmarks. On the back of the bookmarks I've given you, one of the things that I do personally each year is to take some time to pick a Bible verse and to then use that Bible verse regularly in my prayers throughout the year. And I'd like to encourage you to think about doing the same, to pick a verse that may be helpful for you this year. The ones on the back are just ideas to get you started. Maybe it's one of those that speaks to you, but it might be there's a different verse that you want to use. For me, I find as I dwell with a particular verse and come back to it repeatedly in prayer, it can be a way to let that verse, those words, speak more deeply, to seep into me. Later in the service, on the other side of the bookmark, which is the side I didn't mention earlier, we're going to pray the covenant prayer together. This prayer forms part of the liturgy of the Methodist Church and is used once a year at their covenant service, typically in the New Year. So many Methodist churches today, they will be praying this prayer. And the whole congregation makes this rededication to God. This traditional prayer makes it very clear that this affirmation is a serious one that embraces the whole of our lives in all its parts. It's a really tough prayer to say and really mean, and I think it's one that takes our whole lives to put into practice. And this prayer is so central to Christian life and faith that it's been adopted and used by many churches now as well beyond the Methodist Church, which is why we're going to use it today. I think this prayer is a bit like a love poem about surrendering to God in love and joy. And a bit like the vows that we make at a wedding, this covenant reminds us that it's not just about the good times, it's about that ongoing commitment and connection with God in all things. And then today we're going to have communion like we do most weeks here, a reminder that we can always encounter God in our brokenness and in our wholeness. We are always welcome at that table, together encountering something of that mystery of God. And then at the end of our service today, it's Epiphany, at the end of our service today, we're going to bless some chalk. And I don't think this is something that you're familiar with. We're going to use the chalk to write over our doorway at the church. And I invite you also to take some chalk home that we will have blessed today and to write on your doorways at home. This chalking of the doors is intended as a blessing of that threshold. And we'll write the year, 2019, I'm still trying to sink in, 2019, 9. And we're going to write the letters C and B, reminding us of the traditional names of the wise men, Casper, Melchior and Balthazar. Those weren't mentioned in the Bible, but that's what they've come to be known as. But actually those letters also are an abbreviation of the Latin blessing. Don't know how good your Latin is, mine's quite rusty. Christus mansionem benedicat, which means in English, may Christ bless this house. Now the chalk marks will fade over the year, but I invite you each time you notice them, as you enter our church, as you enter your house, may Christ bless this house. May that blessing sink more deeply into you, and may your home and this church this year be places of welcome and places of blessing. So over this year, whether you choose a Bible verse, whether you keep praying this covenant prayer, whether you bless your doorway or keep encountering God through communion, I pray that these things will help you to encounter God more deeply through the year, to discern God's call and voice, and to be open to welcome and receive God's blessing. So may Christ bless this house this year. Amen.
Christ.
Now today we've got to be a little bit different just before we finish. As I mentioned earlier, we're blessing the chalks. So we're blessing these chalks. It's a bit of a motley bunch of chalks. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The Lord shall watch over your going out and your coming in from this time forth forevermore. And so we bless this chalk. God, who leads your people through the journey of life, as you led Caspar, Melchior and Balthazar to worship Jesus, so lead us to be fearless in making Jesus known in our homes and in our lives. Bless this chalk, that those who see the blessing on our homes and on our church may know that our doorways are places of welcome and blessing, and that you are the God who blesses us every day. We ask this in the name of Jesus, born of Mary, who is alive and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. So as we process out, the choir and us are going to lead the way, but I invite all of you to join with us, and we'll see how many of us we can get in the foyer, and we're going to mark the blessing on the doorway of the church. So please all join behind us as we process out. You'll be able to come back and get your stuff. Don't worry about bringing everything with you. Thank you. I invite you to do this on home. It's written on the bottom of your bookmarks as well to remind you. So we're going to write it in chalk. 20, and all the pluses are to remember Jesus' cross. 20 plus C plus M plus B plus 19. So the 2019 CMB, may Christ bless this house and bless this place of worship. Amen. Amen. So I invite you, if you want to take a chalk home and do the same on your doorway at home. A reminder of Christ's blessing in your home as well as on this place here.
Or somebody else's doorway.
Well, you need to ask that question before that's
all get done.
So yeah, please do take a chalk.